Hi everybody, I'm Ryan, and today we're going to talk about Jeskai Oculus in Standard. We're going to talk about cards in the deck, the overall strategy of the deck, and how to play the deck. Let's jump into it. So this is Jeskai Oculus in Standard. So this is effectively a graveyard deck that is trying to do a few things. The biggest and most powerful thing is discarding Aberrant Oculus, which is a 3-mana 5/5. As an additional cost to cast a spell, exile 6 cards from your graveyard, has flying, and the beginning of each opponent's upkeep manifests dread. So if we're discarding a bunch of cards in this deck, we can cast this card from our hand reliably well, but the most powerful thing to do is discarding this card, and then casting Helping Hand or Recommission, which effectively do the same thing. Helping Hand is a 1-mana sorcery. Return target creature card from mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped, which means we circumnavigate that additional cost. And then Recommission, which is a sorcery. Return target artifact or creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. If a creature enters this way, it enters with an additional +1/+1 counter. So 1 more mana for slightly better and bigger creature. And then if Aberrant Oculus sits, which it very often does, the game's pretty much over. But this isn't our primary game plan. It's just a very, very, very scary nut hand. So how are we putting things into our graveyard? One is Steamcore Scholar. Steamcore Scholar is a 3-mana 2/2 with Flying and Vigilance. When Steamcore Scholar enters, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards unless you discard an instant or sorcery card or a creature card with Flying, which we have plenty of creature cards with Flying, so that's fine, but discarding the 2 cards is totally fine as well. This gives us that card selection, but also fills up our graveyard and also lets us put those powerful cards into our graveyard so we can reanimate them. Additional ways to discard. We have Bitter Reunion. Bitter Reunion is a 2-mana enchantment. When Bitter Reunion enters, you may discard a card. If you do, draw 2 cards, and we can pay 1 mana and sacrifice Bitter Reunion to have creatures you control gain haste until end of turn. That second part is just like kind of nice. It lets us kill very, very quickly and is always like really, really threatening, and your opponent always has to play around it. But the first part, discard a card, draw 2 cards, already excellent. We're playing For Fear of Missing Out. This is a 2-mana 2/3. When it enters, discard a card, then draw a card. So awesome, we're still filling up our graveyard. However, we can also capitalize on having a lot of cards in our graveyard with Fear of Missing Out, because it has Delirium. Whenever Fear of Missing Out attacks for the first time each turn, if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, untap target creature. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase. And so having additional combat phases, especially with giant evasive creatures like Aberrant Oculus in our deck, and maybe even, the Steamcore Scholar is totally fine as well, especially since Steamcore Scholar has Vigilance, so you don't need to untap it, but you still get the additional combat phase. This allows us to deal a ridiculous amount of damage all in one turn, really similar to Bitter Reunion. Then the last way to discard, but not necessarily the last way to put cards into our graveyard, is Inti. This is a 2-mana 2/2. Whenever you attack, you may discard a card. When you do, put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature. It gains trample until end of turn. And whenever you discard 1 or more cards, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card until your next end step. So this gives us that card selection. It allows us to deal even more damage, but giving that +1/+1 counter and trample to an attacking creature. And it allows us to dig even deeper by exiling the top card of our library. And then the last way to fill up our graveyard is Spyglass Siren. Spyglass Siren is a 1-mana 1/1 with Flying. When it enters, you get a map token. And then map tokens are an artifact with 1 mana and tap it and sacrifice it to have target creature explore, which basically just means revealing the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it into your hand. If it's a non-land card, you can put it into your graveyard or leave it on top, and the creature gets a +1/+1 counter. So it's, again, another way to put things into your graveyard. In addition to that, we have those Surveil lands like Thundering Falls and whatnot. So again, we're putting as many cards as we can into our graveyard to make sure Fear of Missing Out can get its triggers whenever we attack, and we can get Aberrant Oculus onto the battlefield either from our hand or with Helping Hand and Recommission. Now, to support that, we're playing Proph's Eidetic Memory. Proph's Eidetic Memory is a 2-mana legendary enchantment. When it enters, draw a card. You have no maximum hand size. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you've drawn more than 1 card this turn, put X +1/+1 counters on target creature you control, where X is the number of cards you've drawn this turn -1. The cool part about this is, like, maybe not most, but a giant part of our deck draws cards, sometimes multiple, during your turn. And then if you Proph's Eidetic Memory something with Flying, like Spyglass Siren, Aberrant Oculus, or Steamcore Scholar, or even put it on a ground creature and then give it trample or something, it is just so powerful, especially on Steamcore Scholar with Flying and Vigilance. And it kind of comboing with itself when you have Proph's Eidetic Memory by drawing 2 cards, which is really, really, really good. As far as a removal and other additional stuff, we're playing for Torch the Tower. It's a 1 mana instant where it deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If the spell is bargained, instead it deals 3 damage to that permanent and you scry 1. And if a permanent was dealt damage by Torch the Tower, would die this turn, exile it instead. Very good against Heartfire Hero and like the white enduring creature and stuff like that, but generally just one of the better red removal spells in Standard. We're playing 2 Spell Pierce for those non-creature spells just so we can stay really, really tempo positive. And we're playing a Bounce Off and an Into the Flood mod, doing effectively similar things. Bounce Off 1 mana instant, return target creature or vehicle to its owner's hand. And Into the Flood mod is you can gift a tapped fish, and it says return target creature and opponent controls to its owner's hand. If the gift was promised, instead return target non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner's hand. I think 2 Into the Flood mod is totally fine over the 1 Bounce Off. I just kind of like 1 and 1. This allows us to recycle our end of the battlefield effects if we really want to, and also can get some things out of the way because very often we're attacking for a huge amount in the air. Besides the Servile lands, there's nothing really going on with the lands, but as far as the sideboard goes, we're playing 3 Destroy Evil. Mostly has enchantment hate, but also really good against big blockers. We really care about big blockers in the air. So I'm thinking like Haughty Djinn or other Aberrant Oculuses, but also like against Leyline Bindings and whatnot. Negate, 2 mana counter target non-creature spell. Generally good against decks with a lot of big mana non-creature spells. Pyroclasm, as a 2 of, it's a 2 mana sorcery, deal 2 damage to each creature. Very good against decks that are going wide, like Mono Red and Convoke. Similar thing with Brotherhood's End, though it's also decent against artifacts. It's a 3 mana sorcery where you choose 1, it deals 3 damage to each creature and each planeswalker, and or destroy all artifacts with a mana value 3 or less. It's again slightly worse, slightly better in some situations than Pyroclasm. We're playing 3 Chandra Spark Hunter. It's a 4 mana planeswalker that starts at 4 loyalty. At the beginning of combat in your turn, choose up to 1 target vehicle you control. Until end of turn, it becomes a artifact creature and gains haste. And it's +2. You may sacrifice an artifact or discard a card if you do draw a card. So it's already moving along with the primary strategy of our deck. 0, create a 3/2 colorless vehicle artifact token with crew 1, and its -7 is you get an emblem with whenever an artifact you control enters, this emblem deals 3 damage to any target. So generally you want this card against decks that are decent at answering our primary plan, because this card allows us to have a slightly longer game plan than just trying to tempo them out and kill our opponent really, really quickly. We're playing Ghost Vacuum as our graveyard hate of choice. It's a 1 mana artifact. Tap it to exile target card from a graveyard, and we can pay 6 mana and tap it to sacrifice Ghost Vacuum to put each creature card exiled with Ghost Vacuum onto the battlefield under your control with a flying counter on it. Each of them is a 1/1 spirit in addition to its other types. Activate only as a sorcery. So it has upside if the game goes very long as well, but we're mostly playing it for graveyard hate. My camera just died. Okay, we back. And then we're playing the Filigree Silex. It's a 2 mana artifact. Tap it to put an oil counter on it. We can sacrifice it to destroy each non-land permanent with a mana value equal to the number of oil counters on the Filigree Silex. And we can tap it and remove 10 oil counters from among permanents you control and sacrifice the Filigree Silex. It deals 10 damage to any target. We're almost never going to do that last thing. We're mostly playing this as a Ratchet Bomb. Very good against decks that have low mana permanents that are going really wide with them. So again, like Mono Red or Convoke or whatever, which are this deck's kind of rough matchups. But if you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Hit the mic.